Yeah, so I really appreciate being able to stand up here at the end of the day and try and compress the whole thing into about 5 minutes in some way that makes sense. Hopefully, at least, if nothing else, the stuff I was talking about this morning actually makes a little bit more sense now, because that was really very much about setting the scene with some of that background information you really need to know to understand the discussions that we've had throughout the rest of the day. So all those general points about what a tonne of carbon is, what an Australian carbon credit unit is, all those real fundamentals about how you actually get into this, then came through with the really big discussion we had around vegetation, with the discussion we had around herd efficiency. But someone asked me a question about politics and the impact of politics on it. And I said, a couple of times during my presentation this morning, I said, right, I'll cover that at the end. So I'm going to try and do that. Hopefully, I don't offend too many people, but there's a fair chance I will. So we'll give it a bash.
Good morning. Australian action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions since 1990, led by my government, will prevent about 87 million tonnes of climate-changing carbon a year entering the atmosphere by 2010. That's a massive reduction and a tangible example of the Coalition's commitment to the climate change challenge. I'll also be announcing a cap-and-trade emissions trading system that will help Australia substantially lower our domestic greenhouse gas emissions at the lowest cost.
This guy was leading the world in his thoughts about this stuff. The first carbon trading scheme in the world, or emissions trading scheme I should say, was in New South Wales in 2003, about the same time up until this year when they last won the State of Origin. That's how long this stuff's been around. Now the next guy, I think we still remember who he is.
I also think that if you want to put a price on carbon, why not just do it with a simple tax? Why not ask motorists to pay more? Why not ask electricity consumers to pay more? And then at the end of the year you can take your invoices to the tax office and get a rebate of the carbon tax you've paid. It would be burdensome, all taxes are burdensome, but it would certainly change the price of carbon, raise the price of carbon without increasing in any way the overall tax burden.
It would be burdensome. All taxes are burdensome. But what a great idea. It's amazing the things you can say when you're in opposition. When you actually come into the fact that you want to get into Parliament, you might change your mind a little bit. But it shows that the consistency of the ideas have actually been around for a long time. And to be fair in politics, because we always have to do that, I don't work for the ABC, but I still get monitored to make sure I'm even on both sides.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
So we've all heard that one before, and that's probably the classic that gets replayed over and over and over. But in terms of political risk for participating in this market, at various times, the carbon market, the production of a carbon credit, has been supported by all sides, all the varying sides of politics in Australia. We've actually got to the point now where we have international agreement on this. So how that's going to look into the future, we don't really know yet, and there'll be all sorts of speculation. But the ability for landholders to generate a carbon credit, what used to be called the Carbon Farming Initiative, it was even supported by the Greens. So it doesn't mean it was necessarily a bad idea, it's actually got cross-party support. So you've got two things going for you. You've got widespread support for the ability to generate a carbon credit in agriculture, and you have widespread support for the demand side of it. We will be reducing our emissions, and generating carbon credits will be a part of that. So there will be significant policy risk, but it will come through program risk. Politics will continue to play out, as it always does, as we've seen with live export and a range of other things. But that's a risk that people will need to manage throughout the market, along with those other risks for production. So hopefully I've covered the politics. The next thing we've got to talk about is Seamus talked to us and Brock talked to us about, Seamus talked about satellite imagery and stuff, which this is obviously not. This is taken out of the photo, aerial photo taken out of the window of a recreational aircraft while you're trying to fly it, which is why it's such a dodgy effort. It's actually just to the southeast of here, but I've spun it all around and played with it so you can't recognise the property. I hope I haven't offended anyone by putting their property up here. But I put it up because Brock, to me, this matched what Brock was talking about. And I actually got the most out of Brock's speech today about the reasons behind why he got into this and the situation it's left them in. The floor, that floor of funding it's provided. I'm just going to do that. So that ongoing funding that it's now provided so that it can plan and make a business decision. I've talked about this before. So if you look at this as a standard sort of property, it's a very neat square one. I've actually made it up. But you could look at this and say, well, okay, look at your PMAV, look at the different permits you've got. You can sit there and say, okay, this block here, it's red on your PMAV. You can't clear it, can't do anything with it anyway. Forget it, you're not going to make a carbon dollar out of it. You can't do anything with it anyway. You don't have the right to clear it. You could look at these green areas and say, actually, I can clear these. I haven't done them yet. But what I'm going to do is this block here, this one here, it's a bit of a rough block. It's a bit of a pain to manage anyway. It probably costs me more to manage the stock in that area, trying to get them in, trying to get them out for the production that they return. Those sorts of areas are perfect for vegetation carbon nets. It's not impacting on the rest of the management of your property. It's probably saving you money because we've all got areas of property that are harder to manage than the others. And then it's still leaving the rest of this property for me to use as a productive income source. So you're right, you'll have a crediting period of 25 years. You've got contract sale periods of up to 10 years at the moment, and someone will want to buy them from you after that. But there's going to be a period when your project stops producing credits and you still need an income source to keep going. And you can do that by maintaining these areas of productive areas. We also talked about, Paul and Mark talked about some of the, not the avoided clearing and not the regeneration, but the revegetation myths. And what you can do here on this property, this one's actually a gully area here. This one's actually a pinch point. It's actually draining this area down here. And it's about to start working its way back up here, which will impact on this drain here, will impact on all this grazing area. So what you could actually do there is go in there and rehabilitate those areas actively because it's a good land management outcome. But combine that with your re-veg work up here with some of your pasture work, and you've got a potential carbon project again, which has given you a bit of a mosaic across your property. So you've got some security, you're using different across your property. You've got different income sources, but every single one of them actually makes sense from a property management perspective. And at the end of the day, you're left with a property that could be potentially more productive than the one you started with, depending on how you want to reinvest that. And that, I mean, that's a longer talk, but some of that stuff that Brock was talking about, the decisions that they went through, how they've actually implemented that on their property, are critical decisions for anyone that are considering this sort of thing. After that, we had Scott talking about the novel idea of pastoralists with a tax problem. I really like that. This is now the second workshop I've been to where someone has talked about pastoralists with a tax problem. Now, I wish you all the best with it. If you've got a tax problem, it means you've got money, and that's a very enviable position to be in. And it's not something that you get all the time. And it certainly then impacts on that next stage where we were talking about property values. And to me, it's very simple for me. I don't have a tax problem, and I don't have a parcel property. So it's not an issue I've got to deal with. But to me, a lot of the considerations are fairly similar to the ones that you do now. If you're talking about the value of your property, the biggest things that impact that are how you manage it and the infrastructure that you want to put into it, how you invest any money that you do have. So if you want to, go to the Gold Coast and live the high life and drive a Ferrari around or something, that's obviously not going to do the value of your property much good once you've sucked all this carbon money out of it. But if you want to reinvest it, improve the infrastructure on your property, change your grazing management, make it a more productive enterprise, then that's obviously, to me, seems pretty straightforward, going to give you a benefit to the valuation of your property. That's the same as it is now. So I wish you all the best if you happen to be in that enviable position. There was a lot of interest around the permanence and the project crediting period. And so I just want to be really clear on that one. If you, the graph's gone. But there's 3 different dates that keep popping up and people are confusing them. So one is permanence. If you have a carbon sequestration project where you're sucking those gases out of the air and you'll start storing them in vegetation and soils, it has to be permanent. And permanent is defined, your choice, either 25 years or 100. That is different to the crediting period for your project. So if you have a project registered, and for a veg sequestration project, that period, 25 years, that's the period over which you can generate a credit from your project. So if you're running your project and you start at year 0 and you run along, you can generate a credit for 25 years. You still have the permanence obligation for either that 25-year period or the 100-year period from the point where that credit was generated. And those 2 dates are different again from the current contracts that are being offered. So that's just a sale contract. So you can have a project where you can generate a credit over 25 years, but in the first instance, you're only going to get a contract with the Australian government to sell them to them for 10 years. It means you'll get to the end of that contract period, the sale contract, you can still generate credits because your project life continues. You still have responsibility for the permanence, and you can sell into another contract. You could potentially sell into a third-party market. Who knows? In 10 years' time, you could be selling into Uzbekistan to help them with their carbon emissions. Who knows? But the credits that you generate and the time X number of cows per year for the next 3 years into an abattoir, when you get to the end of that contract, it doesn't mean you're no longer a beef farmer. You can still go and grow beef, you just have to find another market for it. It's your choice. And that's really what the difference is there. If anyone's still got some questions about that, there are a number of people in the room that can really help clarify that one, but please feel free to raise them. The final one that I just need to quickly summarise was Peter Whip. How am I going for time? All good?
60 seconds. No, you've got it 3.
I like Peter's presentation. I haven't seen Peter's presentation before. I had unwittingly referred to his property. I hope I did it justice. I like it because he agrees with me. Basically, I do think we probably overplay how much logic goes into the average decision. And that's not just for pastoralists, that's for everyone. You know, we go out, we see the flash new car, we think, I want that flash new car, now I've got to think of a way to justify it. Oh, the fuel economy's better, I need it for my business, it's going to be more reliable. Hey, it's a tax break, great. Now I've justified it, I'm going to go and buy it. And believe it or not, a lot of the decisions we make in agriculture are a little bit the same. You know, no one likes the look of the Belgian blue bull I put up there. I'm not going to go into them. No one cares how much they're worth or how easy they are to grow or what we can do with them. It's just, I don't like the look of them. Angus versus Hereford, you know, north versus south, whatever it is, whatever the product is. We actually do make a lot of decisions not based on those pure financials. But it's incredibly important to be aware of that when we do. So it's good to see that sort of information that Peter's put up so we can actually look at those financials. Because if you did, and you were serious at the 1.5%, 2% return rate, sell up, put the money in the bank, sit at home, twiddle your thumbs all day, do nothing useful, and live off the interest, which is actually going to be greater than that. It's still not going to be much of a lifestyle, but it's because we do things for reasons other than finances. We have all these other complexities. We have families to look after, we have history, we have, you know, belonging, and we have a value in the industry that we participate in. There's all sorts of different reasons why we do it. So when you're making your decisions around this, do definitely take into account those financial situations, but also take into account your own personal situation. Are you retiring soon? Do the kids want to come onto the property? What's the future look like? Do you have kids or not? If you don't have kids and you're 60 plus years old, seriously, what do you care about a 100-year permanence rule? Just take the money and run. You know? I don't know. It's your call. But, sorry, Paul, I don't need to. I actually used to go a little bit further than that, but since you were in the room, I thought no. My personal part of this, everyone's looking really tired. This is my dog at home. This is what he looks like when he's had enough. He just lies there and says, "Nut, walk over me." There's a little bit of that here. There's a lot of information around. People have been asking all day. We've referred to a number of different websites. You don't have to write this down. This website up the top here, southwestnrm.org.au, and this one here, for all the older people in the room, YouTube's this, it's like TV and it comes up on your computer and you can look at stuff. If you actually go into there, all the presentations from today, or I think the majority of presentations from today will be on there. There's all sorts of stuff on YouTube. You can waste days and days and days. But if you just go to the Southwest NRM channel, it'll all be productive.